Page 325.
$3.25. Bingo.
The very bottom of the page, Psalm 18, has a lovely little tune attached to it, and one I believe is easy enough for everyone in the room to sing. So I'm going to sing a small piece and then invite you to repeat until we have the main idea, and then we'll sing it together. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, just that. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, beautiful. Vayahi Lishua, just that second part. Vayahi Lishua, all together. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. Beautiful. Second part goes like this. O Ziv Zimrat Yah. Try that. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. That's you. Vayahi Lishua. So easy. Let's try it together as a community. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. One more time. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. Faster. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua. O Ziv Zimrat Yah, Vayahi Lishua.
Page 328. Page 328. We give thanks today for a Torah of life, the way of kindness, mercy, and truth. May compassion be our source of sustenance now, as in our people's past. May our souls withstand times of crisis, and our hearts the inclination to evil. May the covenant of Abraham and Sarah strengthen our will to do what is right. May the qualities of mercy and goodness, love and forgiveness flow through our lives. And let us be strong in a perilous world. Let us open our hearts to the path of Torah.
I'd like to invite forward David and Lori Fleischman to open the ark.
Lori
It's okay.
and Shifra.
No worries.
Oh,
That's okay. No worries. please. Our amazing student Torah reader, and Ben Abrams. Gary Louie, would you please come forward?
Baruch Adonai Hamavarach. Baruch Adonai Hamavarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Hamavarach. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
If you would like to follow along, you may feel free to do so. We are on page 338. 338. Give me just one moment, please.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber el kol adat b'nei Israel. V'amarta lechem kedoshim tehiyu. Ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. Ishimo ve'aviv tira'u. V'shabtotai tishmoru. Ani Adonai Elohechem, al tifnu el halilim, v'alohem asecha, lo tasu lachem, ani Adonai Elohechem.
V'chi tizbachu zavach shalamim l'Adonai l'rtzonechem tizbachu v'yom tizbachu yachel u'mimacharat v'hanotar ad yom hashlishi ba'esh yisaref Ve'im eachel b'yom hashlishi pigul hu lo yeratzeh ve'ochlav avonaho isa ki et kodesh Adonai chilel v'nichreta hanefesh hahi me'ameha uvkutrechem et katzer artzachem lo techale ve'at tzadcha leksor ve'leket kitzercha lo telaket ve'charmecha lo te'olel uberet karmecha lo telaket ve'ani V'lager ta'atzahov otam ani Adonai Elohechem. Lo tignovu v'lo techachashu v'lo tishakru ish ba'amito. Lo tishavu bishmi tashaker v'chilalta et shem Adonai Elohecha ani Adonai. Lo ta'ashok et reacha v'lo tigzol lo talin פעולת שכיר איתך עד בוקר. לא תקלל חירש ולפני עיוור לא תיתן מכשול. ויראת מאלוהיך אני אדוני. לא תעשו עוול במשפט, לא תישא פני דל, ולא תדר פני גדול, בצדק תשפוט עמיתך. לא תלך רכיל בעמך, לא תעמוד על דם רעך, אני אדוני. לא תשנא את אחיך בלבבך, תוכיח את עמיתך, ולא תשנא עליו חטא.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah tamet chayei olam natan b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
I'd like to invite forward Joy Getzenberg and Devorah Heyman. Joy will be chanting Jonah, just as her father did for many, many years in the congregation he was a part of.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar b'nviim tovim v'ratza b'divreihem hane'emarim emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah Moshe Abdo Uvi Yisrael Amo Uvin V'yei Haemet B'tzedek.
Amen. Vayman Adonai Gadol Livloa et Yonah Vayehi Yonah Bimei Hadav Shalosha Yamim Ushlashot Leilo.
Page 345 at the bottom.
Vayipalel Yonah Eloha Mimei Hadaga Vayomer Karati Mitzara Li El Adonai Vaya'aneni Mi Beten Shol Shivati Shemata Koli V'tachli feini metzula bilvav yamin v'nahar yesoveni kol mishparecha v'galecha alai avaru ve'ani Mati, Migrashti, Mineged, Einecha, Osiv, Lahabit, Elhecha, Kodshecha, Afafuni Mayim ad Nefesh, Tahom, Yesoveni, Suv, Chavush Leroshi, Lekitve Harim, Yarati, Haaretz, Bericheha, Va'adi, Le'olam, Betal, Mishachat, Chayai, Adonai Elohav, Behitatev Olai, Nafshi, et Adonai, Zacharti, Vitavo Elecha, Tefilati, Elhecha, Kodshecha, Mishamrim Hable, Shav, Chazdam, Ya'azovu, Ve'ani, B'kol Toda, Ezvechalach, Asher Nadarti, Ashalema, Vishuata, Ladonai, Vayomer Adonai, Ladag, Vayike et Yonah, El Hayabasha, Vayi Devar Adonai, El Yonah, Shenit Lemor, Kum, Lech El Ninive, Ha'ir, Hagdolah, Ukra Eleha, Et Hakriya, Asher Anochi, Dover Elecha, Vayakom, Yonah, Vayelech, El Ninive, Tidvar Adonai, V'Nineve, Haita, Irgodolah, Lelohim, Mahalach, Shaloshet Yamim, Vayachel Yonah, Lavo, Va'ir, Mechalach Yom, Echad, Vayikra, Ve'yomar, Od, Arba'im Yom, V'Ninive, Nepachet, Vayaminu, Anshe Nineveh, Belohim, V'Reikrutzom, V'Yilbashu Sakim, Migdolam, Va'am Ketanam, Vayiga Adavar, El Melech Nineveh, Vayakom, Mikiso, Vaya'aver, Adarto, Me'alav, Vaychasak, Vayeshev, Al Ha'efer, Vayazek, Vayomer, V'Ninive, Mitam HaMelech, Ugdolah, Lemor, Ha'adam, V'Habchema, Habakar, V'Hatzon, Al Itamu, Me'uma, Al Yeru, Umay vayishto, vayitkasu zakim ha'adam b'habhema, vayikru el Elohim v'chazka v'yashuvu ish midarko hara'a umin echamas asher b'chapehem miodea yashuv v'vichas b'halohim v'shav mecharon apo v'lo noved vayar ha'elohim et masehem ki shavu midarkam hara'ah vayinachem ha'elohim al hara'ah asher diber la'asot lahem v'lo asa.
Avoid that problem. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol ha'olamim tzadik b'kol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh hamdaber m'kayem shechol derarav emet b'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nevi'im ve'al yom ha'kippurim hazeh שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, למחילה ולסליחה ולכפרה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ודברך אמת וחיים לעד. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mochel v'solech la'avonotenu v'la'avonot amo beit Yisrael u'ma'avir ashmotenu b'kol shana v'shana melech al kol ha'aretz mekadesh Yisrael v'yom ha'kippurim.
Invite you to rise, page 352.
Yom
Cantor, was there a particular time set for Yisker to begin? Okay, you can be seated, guys. The cantor put in the cue sheet, MZ Reflections. And I wondered how long my reflections were going to go. That's why. By the way, just an aside for no apparent reason other than that I just think it's delightful. You know what it means when reflections made me think of photographs? You know what it means when someone says that's a really nice photo of you? It means it doesn't look at all like you. More to the point in the effort to have reflections that matter, as one always hopes on the one hand that what you might share is significant, on the other hand, really, is that a matter of consequence? That's the yes and no, the yin and yang of every person who would have the pretense of suggesting how people should live. I almost said how others. And I'd love to imagine that if there's any success to what we will affectionately call my rabbinate, it's that I was never speaking to someone else only. I was also suggesting that which I needed to listen to, that which I needed to respond to, even as I do need Yom Kippur every year, because I don't always respond precisely, perfectly, on point, and wondrously. So, before I go into my reflections, I want to share three others. The first one is by Lawrence Fahrengetti, who passed away this year. He was only a little over 100. The second, I would ask you to guess who wrote it. I didn't. And the third, by a wonderful teacher. So here's Lawrence Farangetti. I am waiting for the great divide to be crossed, and I'm anxiously waiting for the secret of eternal life to be discovered by an obscure general practitioner. And I am waiting for the storms of life to be over, and I am waiting to set sail for happiness, and I am waiting for the lost music to sound again in the lost continent in a new rebirth of wonder. Among the ways that I would deconstruct that particular poem, that offering, is that perhaps the whole point of our services is to have us recognize that there's a time when it's no longer time for waiting. It's time for doing. Or as I much love a refrain that maybe I originated. After the service, that's when the real worship must begin. No more waiting. So this poem, you can leave early if you get who wrote it. You do not have to leave the room. Remain standing at your table and listen. Do not even listen. Simply wait. Do not even wait. Be quite still and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. Any guess? It's a very nice try. Very nice. Mary Oliver. Nope. So I'll end the suspense. When I first encountered this, what? Franz Kafka. And if there was ever an author associated with the challenge of alienation from self and all others, but he had a moment, and that moment translates into Franz Kafka. So, this last one by an obscure University of Syracuse professor by the name of Saul Gordon. He used to go around the country giving speeches about teenagers and parents having frank talks on the facts of life. Alone, feeling sorry for the plants unwatered, like my love in the fold of life. I seek the sun among withered flowers in brief encounters where friendship lingers, not for long. I am loved, not enough to still the exile. I lit 2 candles to find the way. No one noticed. What is a way to a Jewish holiday? Then God responded, somewhat impatiently, I thought. For heaven's sakes, water the plants and get on with it. What I find so wondrously compelling is the everydayness, the ordinariness of that offering. That is where the real wonder may be found, in the ecstasy that has no choice but to roll at our feet. Or again, to suggest what I think is among the genius insights of this, our Jewish tradition. Everyone knows, this is my little framing of it, everyone knows that the aha is incredible. You don't need to be told that. It just simply slaps you across the face and says, notice me. But our genius is at the ho-hum, the everydayness, what we think of as boring stuff, that is also aha. That's the journey, to make that more and more frequently the happenstance, the accident, the occurrence, the serendipity of our lives. So now to my reflections. You're not going to smile? I've just been talking for a whole bunch. The Torah portion, Kiddushim, aside from reminding many of us that it was Rabbi Shalman's bar mitzvah portion, and for many years we were privileged to hear him share it, contains a number of details. And Rabbi Leo Beck, who was one of Rabbi Shalman's teachers, once suggested the details are also holy. An easy example. In the context of what was read, we read, you shall not put a stumbling block before the blind. Now, none of us would do that, would we? You shall not put a stumbling block before the blind. But our tradition actually took that verse as the license, the expectation, and one might even say the requirement for organ transplantation. Cornea, and ad infinitum as opportunities to continue the gift and giving of life. A small detail that was also holy. A different small detail in Jonah. Why in the world did our tradition, our sages, pick Jonah as the portion to read now? Of all times, now. Small piece. The sailors, none of whom are Jewish, don't want to do what this Hebrew says they've got to do. We don't want, they struggle mightily to avoid what he has told them needs to be done. The citizens of Nineveh, that evil, awful city, the embodiment of all that is the enemy of our people, he doesn't want to go there, which is the beginning of the story. And what happens? Those no good for nothings repent. And if those no good for nothings could do so, maybe that's the point. That we could be good for something too. That we might engage in that action, that activity, that conviction as well. A deeper point in the Torah portion itself. If our text could not say it, it would not be possible for us to have imagined it. I'll give you a different entryway into it. Some of you, like me, are fond of the suggestion that God created dogs so that we would know we were created in God's image, and God created cats so that we would know we're not God. But this text begins, Kedoshim tihiyu, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be holy, for I, the eternal your God, am holy. The chutzpah, that we have something in common with the source of life, with the energy that all life shares, with the sacred dimension that is there if only we would recognize it's here, not just out there. And what do? We yawn. We cover our eyes. But as the Baal Shem Tov reminds us, what do we need to do in order to see? Just open your eyes. And if we opened our eyes, it's easy to see a world that is in extremis. But the Jewish question is, what are you doing about it? What are we doing about it? What shall we do about it? So it has been, and so indeed it presumably will continue and continue and continue to be. A Yehuda Amichai poem. I must always walk in the opposite direction to all. Sounds like the definition of what it means in some cases to be an Ivri, on the other side, a Hebrew, a Jew. I must always walk in the opposite direction to all, that is and has been. That is how I feel that I live in Jerusalem. I walk opposite the pilgrim parades in the old city. I feel the friction, I rub against them, feel the texture of their clothes, smell their scents, and hear their talk and song. They flitter by my cheeks like pretty clouds. Sometimes I get entangled in a funeral procession and come out on the other edge, towards the good life, and sometimes I am trapped in happy parades, and I lift my hand like one swimming against the current, or to say goodbye. Goodbye, go, you should go, and I to the other side, to my grief and my resting. I walk opposed to the longing and prayers, so that I may feel their warmth, their warm breath on my face, and the buzz and the rustling of the substance of prayer and longing. An additional suggestion. One of my mentors used to suggest, can people drink deeply when an empty cup is passed around? All of us have a cup of wonder and actions and good deeds and caring and love. Maybe that's why we still can't get out of our head that old archaic translation of the 23rd Psalm. Our cups runneth over. What's the point of them running over if it's not to share them? If it's not to be a cup that sustains and nurtures others? Annie Dillard once suggested, if you really pay attention, life is like holding a wine glass under a waterfall. Let's pay attention. There'll be much to imbibe and even more to share. Any countersuits? No? Okay. Page 518. I'm turning, I promise. These I remember. The ones whose lives were shaped by a mitzvah, you must not remain indifferent. The ones who lost their lives through devotion to a mitzvah, justice, justice you shall pursue. The ones who embodied through deed and dedication a mitzvah, choose life. And these I remember. The ones who mended the broken, brought healing to the wounded, fought back despair with the solace of faith. The ones who breathed life into a prayer, l'takein olam b'malchut Shaddai, to establish in the world the sovereignty of high and noble purpose. I remember these, artists of the soul, architects of redemption, the activists and advocates of justice and beauty, exemplars of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. On this holy day, we remember.
I have taken an oath to remember it all, to remember, to forget nothing at all. Forgetting nothing of this till the 10th generation, till the grave disappears, to the last, to its ending, till the vanishing laws are ended for good. I swear this night of terror shall not have passed in vain. I swear this morning I'll not live unchanged, as if I were no wiser, even now, even now.
In the previous prayer book, there was a service, as there is in this one, called the Avodah, the worship recalling the ancient temple, and even more specifically, the 10 martyrs, the rabbis who gave up their lives so that Torah might continue, so that our people's story might continue. If you'll turn to page 520, we'll find the name of one of them, and then a continuation with the suggestion of the continuity, alas, of the challenge of making a difference in this world. Rabbi Akiba was one of the 10, a man of piety and humility, spiritual leader of the Jewish community in the land of Israel, supporter of the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome that began in 132 of the Common Era, who openly defied the Roman decree against assembling in synagogues and teaching Torah. Of Akiva ben Yosef we are told, when the time came to say the morning Shema, the Roman executioners were combing Akiba's flesh with iron, and he said, "Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one." Akiba's students asked him, "Rabbi, even now?" And he said, "All my life I have been troubled that I could not obey this verse, love Adonai with all your soul," which is to say, love God even when God takes your soul. And I have wondered, when will I be able to fulfill this mitzvah? Now that that moment has come, how can I not obey? Akiva stretched out the affirmation to divine unity, the word echad, until the departure of his soul. And he died with echad upon his lips. The next verse is only a portion of a statement attributed to him. Great love was shown to human beings in that we were made in the image of God. But then he went on, even greater love, that we can know that we are created in the image of God. Our task is to make that true. In these 10 we remember Shmuel Zeigelbaum, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, Eddie Hillison, Yosef Romano, Hannah Senish, Daniel Porl, Rabbi Regina Jonas, Yitzchak Rabin. Men and women of the modern era who embodied the essence of Tikkun Olam, offering hands and hearts to a world in need of repair. Their rich lives and their tragic deaths remind us that every human life has the power to shape history. The prayers of Yom Kippur set us on a path to becoming better human beings. Today, let us learn from the lives of those who walked that path before us. Never say, we walk the final road.
Du sollst nicht sagen, was du gehst im letzten Weg, wenn Himmeln bleiende verstellen bleiete, weil kommen wird noch unser ausgeböckte Schau. Es fällt abbeugt und unser Trott mit seinen Dor, weil kommen wird noch unser ausgeböckte Schau. Es fällt abbeugt und unser Trott mit seinen Dor.
Von grünen Palmenland bis Weißenland von Schnee, wir seinen da mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh, und wohlgefallen in schon spitz von unser Blut, wird noch a sprutzt und unser Gwure, unser Mord, und wohlgefallen in schon spitz von unser Blut, wird noch a sprutzt und unser Gwure, unser Mord.
Es wird die Morgensonne erleuchten unser Hand, der schwarze Leuchtenwind verschwinden mit dem Feind, und ein Besonnen wird die Sonne von dem Kajor, wie aber Rosa geht das Lied von Tor zu Tor, und ein Besonnen wird die Sonne von dem Kajor, wie aber Rosa geht das Lied von Tor zu Tor. Das Lied geschlagen, das Lied geschlagen, ein Lied von Sonne, es wird
On page 524, I trust you've noticed these little excerpts about each of these wondrous persons. This from the wife of Michael Schwerner, whom, as you know, along with James Chaney and Andrew Goodman, was slain in Mississippi. After the murders, Rita Schwerner said, "It's tragic as far as I'm concerned that white Northerners have to be caught up in the machinery of injustice and indifference in the South before the American people register concern. I personally suspect that if Mr. Chaney, who is a native Mississippian Negro, had been alone at the time of the disappearance, that this case, like so many others that have come before, would have gone completely unnoticed." Again, I saw all the oppressions that are practiced under the sun, and behold the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. But we have a dream today, a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the eternal shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice, you shall pursue. I suspect that not many are familiar with the name Etty Hillison. Her entire diaries have been published, and they're a remarkable document. She was a volunteer social worker at Westerbrook, a German transit camp for Jews and other foreigners who were sent to Auschwitz in freight cars that left the camp every Tuesday beginning in 1942. After traveling for a year between Amsterdam and Westerbrook, advocating for her people and offering them comfort and material support, she herself was imprisoned in Westerbrook in 1943. The diaries and letters Hillison wrote during her last 2 years of life document her courage, empathy, and spiritual depth. Dutch farmers found a postcard she threw from the train as it left Westerbrook. It read, "We left the camp singing." She died in Auschwitz in November 1943 at the age of 29. It is sometimes hard to take in and comprehend, O God, what those created in your likeness do to each other in these disjointed days. But I no longer shut myself away in my room. I try to look things straight in the face, even the worst crimes. I try to face up to your world, God, not to escape from reality into beautiful dreams, though I believe that beautiful dreams can exist beside the most horrible reality. And I continue to praise your creation, God, despite everything. Choose life so that you and your children may live. On page 528, Pearl was an American journalist who covered ethnic strife and war in the Balkans, in Sudan, and in Iran. He was also a citizen of Israel. By 2002, Pearl was the Wall Street Journal's bureau chief in South Asia. While investigating Islamic terrorism in Karachi, Pakistan, he was abducted and executed by al-Qaeda terrorists. A videotape of his murder at the age of 38 preserves his last words. "My father is Jewish. My mother is Jewish. I am Jewish. Back in the town of Bnei Brak, there is a street named after my great-grandfather, Chaim Pearl, who was one of the founders of the town. South African writer and political activist, and am I correct, also a Nobel Prize-winning author? Later reflected, I am a Jew. To be a Jew, to be black, is simply something you are. There is no pride in belonging to one particular race, color, or designation, and no denigration whatever in your identity. In a questionnaire, what wish I would want to leave behind me in the world? My answer is to recognize yourself in others. That would be the end of racism, which we know in all its pain and despicable horror. I believe that Daniel Pearl's last words, I am a Jew, were an assertion of his inalienable right to recognition of the human oneness in his specific identity. His was the ultimate judgment on the senseless brutality that took his young life. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Page 530. We all know some of this story. Yitzhak Rabin, as a statesman, worked assiduously for peace between Israel and the Palestinians, for which he received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1994. Upon signing the Oslo Accords on the White House lawn on September 13, 1993, he said, "Let me say to you, the Palestinians, we are destined to live together on the same soil and the same land. We, the soldiers, who have returned from battles stained with blood, we who have seen our relatives and friends killed before our eyes, we who have attended their funerals and cannot look into the eyes of their parents, we who have come from a land where parents buried their children, we who have fought against you, the Palestinians, we say to you today in a loud and clear voice, enough of blood and tears, enough. We have no desire for revenge. We harbor no hatred toward you. We, like you, are people who want to build a home, to plant a tree, to love, live side by side with you in dignity, in empathy, as human beings, as free people. We are today giving peace a chance and again saying to you, let us pray that a day will come when we will say enough. Farewell to arms. On July 26, 94, Rabin spoke before a joint session of Congress. I, serial number 30743, Lieutenant General in Reserve Yitzhak Rabin, a soldier in the Israeli Defense Force and in the Army of Peace. I, who have sent armies into fire and soldiers to the death, say today, we sail onto a war which has no casualties, no wounded, no blood nor suffering. It is the only war which is a pleasure to participate in, the war for peace. On November 4th, 1995, at a peace rally in Tel Aviv, Rabin was assassinated by a radical Jewish opponent of his plan for peace. A blood-stained photocopy of the song Shir LaShalom was found in his pocket. Lo tuchal lahitalem. You must not remain indifferent. On page 540, like the stars by day, our beloved dead are not seen with mortal eyes, but they shine on in the untroubled firmament of endless time. On page 542, the middle on the right side, before we do that, if you notice in the center it says Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam. That's often found on a Shiva candle. It literally means God's light is a person's soul, which is to say, how does God get into the world except through us, through who we are and who we are supposed to be? God's light. We're God's flashlight. How precious your loving kindness. We take refuge in the shadow of your wings. How abundant the feast in your house. You give us strength from the river of your delights. You are the fountain of life. In your light shall we see light. Page 544.
לכן צומח ליבי, ויגל כבודי, אף בשרי ישכון לבטח, כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסכתך לראות שחט, תודיעני אורח חיים, אורח חיים. שובע שמחות את פניה, נעמוד במנחה נצח. שביתי אדוני לנגד תמיד, כי ממני בל אמות.
Page 547. I'm about to say with your indulgence, but even if you don't indulge me, I'm going to read it anyway. Another Yehuda Amichai poem. Yom Kippur without my father and without my mother is not Yom Kippur. From the blessing of their hands on my head, just the tremor has remained, like the tremor of an engine that didn't stop even after their death. I'm trying to get out that death ends a life. That's what it does for a living, but it never ends the relationship. Never. Page 548. At birth, a miracle. You light the spark in every human soul. Emerging into light, we breathe it in, the neshama, your sacred gift of life. And every day, every breath comes to us as a miracle. The light within us, unique and precious, is with us always while we live. When breath has ceased and life has gone, the neshama returns to you. And the spark that lived inside the ones we love, unique and precious, beautiful and good, is theirs no more. Their light is ours. Their radiance now burns in us, eternal flame of memory. So we light candles to keep our love alive, to bring their light into the world. A light unique and precious, ours to treasure while we live. A ner tamid that lights our days and gives us strength to journey through the nights. Page 553. Move to the front of the line, a voice says. And suddenly there is nobody left standing between you and the world to take the first blows on their shoulders. This is the place in books where part 1 ends and part 2 begins, and there is no part 3. The slate is wiped, not clean, but like a canvas painted over in white, so that a whole new landscape must be started. Bits of the old still showing underneath, those colors sadness lends to a certain hour of evening. Now the line of light at the horizon is the hinge between earth and heaven, only visible a few moments as the sun drops its rusted padlock into place. I'm On page 565.
Do you mean 556?
I meant 565, didn't I?
Maybe not.
No, I didn't. Forgive me. I skipped a cue. That's very kind of you to remind me in such a gentle fashion. We're on page 557.
It's your first mistake all year.
You know what? Let's go to, where's that? SINI is 556, right? Let's do page 556.
Let's do it.
On page 565, it's okay now? So the top of that page has a concluding portion of the larger poem that begins on the other page, A Candle in a Glass. But just this portion, it's a little low light the Yortzeit candle makes. You couldn't read by it or even warm your hands. So the dead are with us only as the scent of fresh coffee, of cinnamon, of pansies excites the nose, and then fades. With us as the small candle burns in its glass. We lose, and we go on losing as long as we live. A little winter, no spring can melt. But everything will remember that I was here. The ships will be the color of my clothing. The birds will use my voice for singing. The fishermen on the rock will ponder my poem. The river will follow my footprints.
There's a house, it's not on a hill, and the paint is chipping off of the old windowsill. There's a tree in the front yard that's older than me, and it's older than all of you. There's a smell that the heat makes. It reminds me of winter and birthdays in December. I remember her, I remember her, I remember her so well. I remember her, I remember her, I remember her so well. But things, they fade. She would kiss my hand, she would kiss my head, and she'd fall asleep with me in my tiny bed. She would sing me lullabies, gave me my hazel eyes, then she'd call me beautiful. She made me beautiful. I remember her, I remember her, I remember her so well. I remember her, I remember her, I remember her so well. But things, they fade, things go to gray, and though I tried to save them, they all turn to gray. Just like the house, it's not on a hill, with the rust on the gate and the chips on the sill, but I love them still.
Another extraordinary testimony to the energy that all life shares, but for a moment, and that moment may be more than enough to say we were blessed. Page 567, page 567.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we
Page 586. If life is a pilgrimage, death is an arrival, a celebration. The last word should be neither craving nor bitterness, but gratitude and peace. We have been given so much. Why is the outcome of our lives, the sum of our achievements, so little? Our embarrassment is like an abyss. Whatever we give away is so much less than what we receive. Perhaps this is the meaning of dying, to give one's whole self away. Death is the end of what we can do as God's partners in redemption. The life that follows must be earned while we are here. It does not come out of nothing. It is an ingathering, the harvest of eternal moments achieved while on earth. Unless we cultivate sensitivity to the glory while we are here, unless we learn how to experience a foretaste of heaven while on earth, what can there be in store for us in any life to come? The seed of life eternal is planted within us here and now. But a seed is wasted when placed on stone into souls that die while the body is still alive. How can I repay the eternal for all God's bountiful gifts to me when life is an answer, death is a homecoming? The deepest wisdom we can attain is to know that our destiny is to aid and to serve. This is the meaning of death, the ultimate self-dedication to the divine. Death, so understood, will not be distorted by the craving for immortality, for this active giving away is reciprocity on our part for God's gift of life. For the pious person, it is a privilege to die. Page 592. One morning, shortly after my mother died, a hesitant tap on the shoulder stopped me as I left the synagogue where I had just finished saying the mourner's Kaddish. I turned to face a fellow morning service regular, a tall, gray-haired gentleman with a football player's thick build. I don't mean to be presumptuous, he said in a soft voice. I know you're very sad right now, but I wanted to tell you that I went through that too when my father died several years ago. And here's the thing. Believe it or not, I am as close to my father now as when he was alive. Maybe even closer, because I have come to understand him better. He is inside me. I hear his voice. We are still that close. Then he smiled and waved goodbye, leaving me to ponder words that I began to understand only years later. What he meant, I think, was that our dead inhabit us like ghosts. The trick, as we knew then, and as he knew then, and I have learned since, is to befriend them rather than have them haunt us. They will greet us on sad anniversaries as well as in joy. We will imagine a deceased parent's response to her grandchild's arrival, or we will call back from memory the words or actions of the one person to whom we would have turned were he or she still there. And eventually, when we hear that voice again, it will bring not just pain, but comfort and resolution. The 23rd Psalm may be found on page 593.
He
page 597, I prefer another translation to Menachem Mendel of Kotz saying, "There is nothing so whole as a broken heart." We understand that, even as the Canadian poet Leonard Cohen came along and said, that's how the light gets in. Our loved ones live in our broken hearts, and at times that brings some measure of healing. Their acts of kindness and generosity are the inheritance they leave behind. We feel their absence, but the beauty of their lives abides among us. As it is said, the name of one who has died shall not disappear. Our loved ones' names and their memories will endure among us. And these are the names on our lips and our hearts. Those who died in this year past: Frankie Aguilera, Mickey A. Hearns, Noreen Alper, Maurice Alpert, Janice Aaron, Paul Bassa, Daphne Broom, Karen Bueller, Carolyn Byron, Laurel Cancela, Norman Chansky, Norman Siselski, Betty Cohn, Jody S. Domberg, Ted Ertishek, Lana Davis Fields, Darko Marion Florschutz, Stephen Frito Friedman, Donald Gant, Beverly Ellen Goldberg, Marjorie Gould, Mitchell Grossman, Kay Murray Hagan, Michael Hakohen, Robert Handman, Toby Hartman, Werner Hyman, Marguerite Karsh, Mikhail Kogan, Anthony D. Lazo Jr., Marty Lev, Sheldon Liebman, Louis Legal, Marty Lev, Rebecca Lockett, David Locks, Donald Blair Lowe III, Stephen Moldlin, Lawrence Thomas O'Neill, Sylvia Osuski, Jimmy Proctor, Harold J. Rothenberg, Jackie Harlow Rothman, Sonia Chansky-Schickler, Stephen Shore, Arlene Silverman, Purvis Staples, Meredith Taylor, Patricia Patty Lee Tellisman, Sharon Vadaboncourt, Francie Volinsky, Lois Diane Chansky-Wasserman, Richard Dick Weber, Irving Sonny Weiner, Gerald Jerry S. Usen, Federico Sokolsky. We pray for those family members and friends who have lost a loved one due to gun violence in our nation, and if there are names we have omitted, we urge you to add them in your hearts now as I invite you to rise for the memorial prayer. Page 598.
שוכן במרומים, המסם דוכן נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. אים קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר רקיע מזהירים, לנשמות יקרינו, שחלכו לעולמם. בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, בצרור החיים את נשמתותם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום, בשלום על משכבם. ונאמר
Please be seated. We continue on page 602 with reading number 2 as we prepare for the Kaddish prayer. We miss them at celebration when there's an empty seat at the table. We miss them when the community gathers and there's an empty place beside us. We miss them today and every day with every year that passes as our life goes on without them. Their faces, their voices, the feel of our arms around them, these are with us forever. For so it is written, love is strong as death. The love that we gave, the love we received, these endure amid the pain of loss. Kaddish is on page 606. We call to mind for blessing those whose yortzites occur this day. Leo B. Cohn, Jack Eisenberg, Lester Ettinger, Jerome X, Samuel Fink, Cynthia Goldstein, Holly J. Han, Idabel Kahn, Betty Kaplan, Rivka Kogan, Shindley Kogan, Lena Lehman, Ruben Rudolph Louis, Jean Malampre, Dwight D. Manis Jr., Alec Markles, Hyman Meyer, Morris Milhouse, Evelyn Pearlstein, Howard Pearlstein, Nancy Lynn Phillips, Mendel Posen, Edward Price, Naftuli Saper, Estelle Schaefer, Shruly Eli Skolnick, Ruth Slutsky, Stephen Schneiderman, Ella B. Sommerfeld, Sharon van de Boomkoer, Edith Wallach, Morris Weiss. To their names, we link those laid to rest in recent days. Mikhail Kogan, Dr. J. Rothenberg. You are welcome, if you choose and if it's your custom, to rise and to pray with me. Yit Gadal, V'yit Gadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
V'alma Divra Chirute, V'amlich Malchute, V'chayechon, Uv'yomechon, Uv'chaye, Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Uv'izman Kariv, V'yamru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Le'olam Ulmei Almaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh. V'yitadar, V'yitalev, V'yitalal, Shmei Dekucha Prechu. Leila Ulale Mikol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Da'amiran V'alma V'yamru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yamru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, V'yamru, Amen. Please be seated. Our worship continues on page 614. Page 614.
Am
As some of you may know, and may have even heard from me, a curiosity that human beings are the only mammals whose tear ducts can be used to express emotion. Other mammals have tear ducts, but they don't express them in terms of emotion. They express them in order to keep their eyes clean. So my children would always wonder, as the old Kodak commercials would reduce me to tears, and some of us remember the word Kodak. Or I was also forbidden by them to ever watch the Jerry Lewis telethon. I'm planning on getting through the reading on page 617 and hoping not to be reduced to a pile of tears. This is the first Yom Kippur since I turned 13 that I was forbidden to fast, not able to fast. I hope the day may come again soon. I was not able to fast on this holy day, and this I regret. But I am thankful for all that I am able to do and for everything that brings me to this moment. I am grateful to parents and grandparents, teachers and friends who have taught me and encouraged me to live a Jewish life. I am grateful to the Jews of other times and places who shaped Yom Kippur into a spiritual peak that calls out, "You can climb higher than you think." I am grateful for the rich spiritual tapestry of this day, the multifaceted wisdom of Machzor and Torah, a symphony of melodies, the radiance of our sanctuary, draped in white, the piercing cry of shofar. I am grateful for traditions that awaken within me the beauty and majesty of the sublime and guide me on the arduous path of teshuvah. I am grateful for teshuvah, which makes the days of awe a turning point in my life, a time of return, a time of change, a season of response. I am grateful for my bond with the house of Israel, the great family of Jews throughout the world, those who stand with me this day and those who do not, the companions who surround me here and those whose presence I feel when I hear the sound of Torah and the vibrant notes of Teruah Shavarim Tekiah. I was not able to fast on this holy day, but my gratitude is deep beyond words. On page 620, the Ne'ilah special melody, Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemer בשירתה.
Bottom of the next page. Taking small steps into the new year, I have come upon a blue lake in my heart, the stillest of waters in this dense word, forest of prayer. And like a stand of old growth, the towers of the last Amidah rise toward the unnamable. That prayer begins on page 622. Please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביאו לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מגן אברהם ויעזרת שרה. אמן. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא עולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממדעון חיי, ומצמיח ישוע. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Please be seated. On page 627, let's try this prayer responsively. When greeting a friend after more than a year, say, "Praise the power that gives life to the dead."
The prisoner is freed and the sick one is healed. Say, "Praise the power that gives life to the dead."
When asking forgiveness and the other forgives, say, "Praise the power that gives life to the dead."
When words of Torah unlock the heart and open the eyes, say, "Praise the power that gives life to the dead."
When evil is stopped and goodness prevails, say, "Praise the power that gives life to the dead."
When hope fills the spirit of one who despaired, say, "Praise the power that gives life to the dead."
When the hearts of the parents turn to the children and the hearts of the children turn to the parents, say, "Praise the power that gives life to the dead." Together, Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hakol. We praise you, eternal power, source of our immortal yearnings, our undying hopes. On page 628, the bottom of that page, shall we together? Open the gates of righteousness for us. Open the gates that we may enter and praise the eternal. Open the gates for us, for all Israel, and for people everywhere. The gates of acceptance and atonement, beauty and creativity. The gates of dignity, empathy, and faith. The gates of generosity and hope, insight and joy. The gates of knowledge and love, meaning and nobility. The gates of openness, patience, and the quest for peace. The gates of renewal, song, and tranquility. The gates of understanding and virtue. The gates of wisdom and wonder, exaltation, youth and old age. The gates of Zion, reborn and rebuilt in our time. Open the gates, open them wide. Show us the way to enter. On page 631, "Stay," I said to the cut flowers. They bowed their heads lower. "Stay," I said to the spider, who fled. "Stay, leaf." It reddened, embarrassed for me in itself. "Stay," I said to my body. It sat as a dog does, obedient for a moment, soon starting to tremble. "Stay," to the earth of riverine valley, meadows of fossilized escarpments, of limestone and sandstone that look back with a changing expression in silence. "Stay," I said to my loves. Each answered, "Always." Page 640. Page 640. $645. Take the fruit of our lips, wholesome, true, and sweet. Accept our offerings, our words, as we walk your path honestly and with integrity. Life is what you cherish and desire, not the death of human beings. Have faith in our righteousness. Diminish the voices that speak against us. Raise us up and let your presence light the day. Let this day's reckoning be done. Help us find atonement. Give us strength to stand upright in the world. Even before we cry out, may your forgiveness go forth, Adonai. Please receive these offerings, the sincere offerings of our lips. And yet we've offered so many words. They echo in my head. I'm emptied out with no more strength to speak. Just my life breath, just my heart, just these broken shards of ancient prayer. They say the shofar's broken cry will reach you, you, rock of my heart, my portion forever. One of the possible ways to understand Yom Kippur is contained in that brief piece that the choir just shared, because they shared it some number of hours ago at the evening service. Immediately after Kol Nidre, we were informed God forgives according to God's word. So we got what we came for right away. And yet some of us stubbornly insist on staying present, yes? Clearly not because God's forgiveness is what we need. Far more, we need a reconciliation with the self, a reconciliation with others. God has already done God's job, turning the work over to us. Heinrich Heine once suggested, God will forgive me. That's God's business. But what are we going to do when it's our business as well? On page 651, the future has an ancient heart. The tree still stands, your love endures. Remind us, we are your children, still bewildered by the world, selfish, willful, lacking in patience, longing for praise, in need of hugs. Remind us, we are servants, day laborers summoned every morning, lazy, distractible, focused on quick rewards, ennobled by your work. Remind us, we are a vineyard, watched over, yearned over, tended these 3,000 years, scorched by fire, but alive at the root, growing slowly toward the harvest day. The future has an ancient heart. The tree still stands. Your love endures. On page 653, the Confession of Sin.
La 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 Hashamnu Bagadnu Dibarnu dofi. La 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 Evinu Vehirshanu Zadnu Hamasnu Tefalnu Shaker La 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 Ya Atznura Kizavnu Latsnu Maradnu Niatsnu Tsaranu Avinu Hashanu Tsaranu Kishinu Oref La 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 Rashanu Shivhatnu Tiavnu Ta'inu Titanu La 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 la.
So I note a few of you are standing. There is a, wait, you can stand. There is a tradition that you're welcome to follow or not. That's what it means to be part of a liberal congregation. And that tradition is during the Elah, the section of the service that we are in. Many in the congregation will remain standing the entire time. They will not be seated. Not an easy thing, but it's meant to point out the not an easy thing that stands in the way of our becoming more of what we are supposed to be. On page 662, Avinu Malkeinu, Kabel Barachamim Vratzon et Tefilatenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it. Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh lemancha rachamecha harabim.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for the sake of your boundless compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh imanu leman shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act towards us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, chotmenu b'sefer parnasa v'kalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us with a book of sustenance and livelihood.
Avinu Malkeinu, chotmenu b'sefer zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of worthiness and merit.
Avinu Malkeinu, chotmenu b'sefer tzlicha u'mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us for the book of forgiveness and pardon.
Avinu Malkeinu, chotmenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu, chotmenu b'sefer geula v'shua.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of redemption and renewal.
Avinu Malkeinu, malei yadenu mi birkot techa.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu, patach sha'arei shamayim litfilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew us for a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu Ein Lanu Melech Ela Ata.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have no sovereign but you.
Avinu Malkeinu Chonenu Va'anenu Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim. Asei Manu Tzedakah V'Chesed V'Hoshienu. As the book of life is closed and sealed, open our hearts, open our hands, let those who ask forgiveness and those who gave forgiveness depart this place in peace. Let all God seekers and soul searchers of this day depart this place inspired and renewed. Together, let us build a community of commitment. Let all of us be sealed this day, Gemara Chatima Tova, sealed for goodness and sealed for life, B'Sefer Chaim Tovim, sealed in the book of life and good, eager to taste life's sweetness, to enjoy the fruit of our labors, to bring light to the darkness, and joy where sorrow dwells. Be sealed for a year of Torah and soulful searching. Be sealed for a year of kindness, good deeds, and love. As the book of life is closed and sealed, open our hands, open our hearts. Page 666. To live life in all its fullness is to stand in awe before an open gate, to gaze into a doorway of hope, a wondrous portal of possibilities. Many are the gates of our lives, many the treasures toward which they lead. And how many close behind us, lost, forgotten, and sealed forever? How many gates, how many years? Standing in awe before the gates of a new year, we see its most precious gift, the minutes and the hours, the days and the weeks, the treasures, the treasure house of time. Every moment is a vessel of infinite holiness. Every morning, noon, and night is a gateway to life's immensity. How will we use this precious, precious gift? Dan, we do need you on page 672. We're not doing the Kaddish, huh? We're not doing the Kaddish. 672. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel, Adonai is our God. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Adonai Hu Elohim, Adonai is God. Sephardic greeting, may we be worthy of our years, and may they be many. Shana Tova. Well done. Having Havdalah because of the challenge of food, etc., and drinking and sharing. So please go home, break your fast or whatever, and have a blessed full year.